back. We finally have an answer regarding Clemson's immediate future.
Boots on the ground coverage, live analysis from Foxborough.
When will Trout be back?
Jamar Chase's future with the Cincinnati Bengals.
The Heat have won the Las Vegas Summer League Championship.
Big news about the Cubs trade deadline plan.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
On the practice fields, adjacent to Gillette Stadium, training camp beginning Wednesday morning.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The top storyline coming out of Foxborough, at least for the first few days, is going to be about the quarterbacks, Murph. For better or for worse, we know that's the way it goes. It's going to be the Drake and Jacoby show, or the Jacoby and Drake show, however you want to pair that duo. But it's going to be all eyes on the quarterbacks. And you and I have gone over this subject several times here. Since Drake was drafted back in April with the number 3 overall pick and Jacoby signed here as a free agent, everyone's been wondering who's going to jockey for position. When you look at the competition right now between Jacoby Brissett, the veteran, and Drake May, the rookie, what should fans reasonably expect to see at the outset of training camp, and how could that change as practices start to progress?
That is a good question. That's a great question from many of you. Many of you asked this, and what you can expect to see is a leader and somebody hopefully willing to follow. Okay? Jacoby Brissett being the leader, and of course Drake May willing to follow and growing as this first camp, his first camp opens up. You guys got to remember. While everybody's talking about the talent of Drake May, we've all talked about it ad nauseum. Since before the draft. This is a kid who has not played a lot of football. He really hasn't. He has not played a lot of football, and Jacoby Brissett has. So if he can sit back and listen and take in what Jacoby can offer and grow along with this brand new coaching staff that he's got to get used to, and one that Jacoby Brissett knows pretty well. I still don't think that this is a battle. I still don't think that this is a competition. I think when push comes to shove, it's going to end up being Jacoby Brissett on the field week 1 and through week 8.
You and I both know that it's really not so much about these two competing. And you've put this eloquently, my friend. It's really about what these guys are doing, how they're coming into camp. Jacoby Brissett has played a lot of football, like you said.
Yep.
He's a veteran in this league. As Rod Tidwell would say, he's been at the puppet show. He's seen the strings. There's not much that you're going to show him that he's not going to be able to adapt to on the field. So in terms of what Jacoby Brissett's going to bring you, you pretty much know what he's going to bring you. He's going to bring you game management. He's going to bring you the ability to use all of his assets, whether it be his legs to extend plays, whether it be his arm, his savvy, his quarterback experience, using all of his skills to be able to elevate his teammates on the field. That's what Jacoby Brissett's going to do. And he's going to do that from the outset of training camp. And to be honest, Murph, I don't expect that to change much. I don't think Jacoby's going to come in and change his game. He knows what he is. Alex Van Pelt knows what he is. He's coached him before. What I'm looking for is what Drake May does, how he comes in after a rookie mini camp and a mandatory mini camp and a handful of OTAs and off-season workouts to see how he came in and is he ready to go.
And there are going to be days like that. We're going to get inundated with data from people that we all know and respect about how good Drake May looked today and how much better he's looked than Jacoby Brissett. But we're not playing at game speed. We're not seeing what what defenses he's facing right now and what he's going to go up against in practice as compared to what he would go up against in week 1 or in the preseason. Just pump the brakes. That's all I'm saying, folks, is he's going to look good. He's a good, talented young kid. And I expect to see continued growth and a little humility, because he's about to start going up against some of the finest defensive backs in the country, in the NFL.
Very good point. And this defense is certainly a great litmus test for any quarterback, whether you're a veteran or whether you're a rookie. If you can get plays and you can make plays against this defense, you know you're doing something great. And another point that I want to circle back to that you just made that I thought was brilliant was the fact that the big play is going to be there. You're going to see Drake May make big throws during this training camp season. He's going to wow you with his arm strength. He's going to make an off-balance throw that people are going to say, Patriots haven't had a quarterback that can do this in quite some time. Maybe he even does it a little bit better than Tom used to do during practice. All right, maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, Murph, but we are going to hear that.
Better than Jim Plunkett.
Exactly, that's right. We're going to hear them tout his athleticism.
Yeah.
We're going to hear them tout his arm. I think the best thing for Patriots fans to do right now is enjoy the big play. Don't fall in love with it. If there's something that you should be falling in love with this kid when it comes to being a quarterback in this league, fall in love with the fundamentals. Look at his footwork. That's what you want to see.
Look at how he reads the defense across the line of scrimmage from him.
Absolutely.
See if he can call out the hot read. Things of that nature. Those are the things that you want to look at right now from Drake May. Not whether or not he threw an off-balance pass that went off of somebody's helmet and ended up in the hands of oh God, man, any one of his wideouts, Jalen Polk. Okay, Jalen Polk made a fantastic catch today. Great. That's fantastic. Okay, go and we'll look at it on film, and everybody will cheer now because we've got a new cover boy here on the Patriots media guide this year, and or the yearbook. What was it? The media guide or the yearbook that they put Mayo on?
That was the yearbook.
The yearbook.
Yeah, it was the yearbook.
And so there's your cover boy. That was a smart move. It was a smart move not to put Drake May on this cover. Okay, it was a smart move of Mayo to take the hit and say, "Yep, the buck stops here," and because that's what that's saying right there. And but no, he's going to have his days. He's going to look great. He's going to look terrible, and in the middle, Jacoby's going to look steady throughout, and he's going to end up being the starter week 1.
And again, folks, it really does. It comes down to repetition. It comes down to familiarity. And it also comes down to reliability. And these are things that Drake May will eventually grow into. But I think we're probably being a little over aggressive to say that he's there yet. What I'm most looking forward to is exactly what you laid out. You want to see how he's going to read the opposing defense. Can he make the hot read? Is he picking up little nuances at the line of scrimmage that allows him to dictate what his team's going to do before the ball is snapped? This is what makes an NFL quarterback. It's what's going to take Drake May from being a good quarterback to a potentially great quarterback if he can master these fundamentals. Obviously, during mandatory minicamp and rookie minicamp, we saw Drake make a departure from some of the mechanics that he's used to. Alex Van Pelt making him lead the shotgun with the left foot as opposed to the right to make sure that he stays in rhythm, working with his footwork over and over again, making sure that he's reading what needs to be done and taking the check down when it's available rather than gunning the ball every single time or trying to make something happen off balance simply because he has the athleticism to do so. You can't always play with your gut. And that to me is what's going to show maturity in Drake May. Not going to be cleaned up overnight. There's still going to be times out there this year, including when he finally does take the reins of this team, that you're going to say that's a rookie mistake. But at the same time, is he growing each and every time he's out there? Are we seeing improvement? The one thing that I did enjoy, or the one thing that made me feel good about this kid, is we saw progression from rookie minicamp to mandatory minicamp. How much progression is he making into training camp now? That, to me, I think is the biggest story coming out of the quarterback room this year. But
I agree.
No football, no NBA, no problem with FanDuel. With baseball, WNBA, and soon the Olympics, there's plenty to dive into over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, though WNBA on a bit of a break so we can get the Olympics. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. How about a little futures betting that's not really futures? We're talking about week 1 NFL lines. That's right. Training camp's here. We're ready for it. Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. We're going to talk about Jordan in a second. They're 1-point road dogs to the Philadelphia Eagles, even though they're not on the road. This game is being played in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So what are you waiting for? Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Mounts, I've been torn. I've been partially being like, man, this is exciting with all the court cases going on, the rumors of leaving conferences, like all this information, everything going on has been this like level of excitement. It's like, hey, there's something to actually pay attention to in the middle of July. You know what I mean? It's been exciting. Another part of me is like, can this please get over with? Like, can we be done with this? Can there be a decision that's made? Can something happen already where we can just move on with our lives? We can know the future. There's been so many question marks regarding Clemson and FSU's future in the ACC or going somewhere else. For some reason, we've partnered those two together. There's a very real chance that they end up in different conferences, but we'll talk about that another time. With so much speculation and so many rumors, there's been a lot of conversations like, what's going to happen? And it seems like we would have answers at one point. It seems like we had answers with them going to the Big 12. Then it seemed like we had answers. They weren't going anywhere. And we've just seen answer and rumor and speculation. Right now, we can say with about 95% confidence that Clemson has officially decided their immediate future for the next 2 years, and that is that they will be staying in the ACC. We're coming off that because due to some sources that we find very trustworthy, and we will give you those credited for sure, it seems like we definitely have found the rumors. Pete Thamel, who is a great reporter, tweeted this yesterday at 8 a.m., right before the start of media week. He said this. He said, we've been told by multiple sources that there's no expectation of Florida State or Clemson to notify the ACC they intend to leave by the August 15th deadline to depart after this upcoming year. That's the deadline to declare intentions to exit for the 25-26 year. What does that mean? It means that Clemson has to, if they want to not be in the conference for 25-26 season, they have to tell the ACC, hey, we're officially leaving the conference by August 15th. Everything that we're seeing, all the sources that we've seen, everybody that we trusted information we have says that Clemson has no intention of saying that they are leaving by that date. They're not going to do that. If they rushed their decision to make that, then it could hurt them in the court cases, could cause them to have to settle, could cause a lot of problems. So as of right now, it seems like they are staying in the ACC, which is big news. Does that mean that they're never going anywhere? Absolutely not. Does that mean that for the next 5 years they'll be in the ACC? Absolutely not. It means for the next 2 years you can expect them to see them in the ACC at least through the spring of 2026. That's exciting. As we've talked about, we are in the middle of this ACC Media Week going on down at Charlotte. It's so exciting. That whole building has this nice buzz to it. People are energetic. They're excited. They're focusing on the future. They're focusing on what's going to happen. It's an exciting time. Love being down there. And while we were down there, of course, a hot topic today as the media week started for the ACC was the transfer portal, was the conference realignment and Clemson and FSU's court cases and all of that. Today, the schedule for the ACC week is there was a couple of colleges there. There was Georgia Tech, there was SMU, and Florida State. But it was also the commissioners' meeting. So Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, got up, talked for about an hour, and then later on went and had an interview with the ACC crew, doing the media crew. But he had some interesting comments to say. the biggest things is I was expecting him to have a lot to say about this. He really didn't. He had some good comments. He had some stuff that was like, oh, is that really what was happening? The first thing he said when he was asked about it is he called the respective lawsuits, he said they were extremely damaging, disruptive, and incredibly harmful to the conference. And then they went on and said that the Clemson and FSU, they willingly signed their grant of rights agreements, and then they were eager to agree to the league's current TV contract. So he's just doubling down on ACC stance. He didn't give any new information, but he's just like, look, they know what they did, and they were excited about it. But he kind of got a little attitude about it. When he said it, he got a little passionate about it. He kind of put some chest into it. You know what I mean? He said it like he said it with his chest. Like he got into it. And so another reporter a couple questions later was like, hey, I noticed your tone changed right there. And here's what he said. Take this or leave it. He said, forceful moments deserve forceful support and leadership. This is a really important time for the conference. Either you believe in what you signed or you don't. We're going to do everything we can to protect and fight for the league. And then he said this line, which we're going to dissect. He said, this conference is bigger than any one school or schools. Throwing shots. He's calling them out. He said, this conference is bigger than any one school or schools. So according to Jim Phillips, he said that this conference has the most exciting group of teams, which college football I definitely disagree with. He said that Clemson ACC is better or is bigger than in Clemson and FSU, and granted it is, but that statement would mean that if Clemson and FSU left, then everything would be fine with the ACC. They wouldn't see any drop off at all. That anyone with any common sense knows that's not the truth. If Clemson and FSU leave the ACC is in major trouble. One, it could start a snowball. It could start this effect where it's just everything's going, other schools jump involved. We talked about yesterday all the schools that are a part of this potential leaving, departure of the ACC, all these rumors, all these schools that are interested in that. So, yes, in theory, technicality, the ACC is bigger than Clemson FSU. But you cannot fool anyone. If those schools leave, which we know we're 95% sure they're staying put till the end of 2026. If those schools leave, the ACC is going to have to do some major damage control. I think adding these 3 new schools was kind of a, hey, we'll set ourselves up for a little bit of protection, but there'd be a lot of damage control to happen. So he had those comments. I thought they were very, very interesting to read about. But overall, it seems like Clemson, they're in a spot where they've already angered ESPN. They've already made the ACC mad, one with the court case, but also, as we talked about a couple episodes, when they asked ESPN and ACC asked them to reschedule their Saturday game or their game against South Carolina to a Friday, Black Friday, and they said, no, that doesn't fit our culture. That isn't what's best for Clemson. And so ACC and ESPN were already mad at Clemson for not being willing to help out there. Now that's got all this court case, they've talked about leaving. The Big 12's been a part of it. There's a big thing right there that could happen. So that's exciting. That is a lot of question marks there. But one thing we want to make sure we talk about is this. I think there's been a lot of people say the SEC and Big Ten are not wanting Clemson. They've said it. They've made comments. They haven't said it showed any interest. And I've said that. I agree with that as of right now. But one thing that's important to note is this. Why would these two conferences verbalize that they want these schools when they don't know how this court case is going to happen? How bad would it look for the SEC or Big Ten to be like, yeah, we want Clemson and FSU, and then the court case goes wrong and they have to stay in the ACC, and they're like, never mind, you're fine. Then they got that. There isn't a win situation for there. I really think when this court case is over and once the legal battles are done, I think we're going to see SEC and Big Ten jump in there and kind of show a little bit of interest, kind of put their names maybe in the ring. I'm not saying they'll definitely go there, but I think they'll definitely be more interested there because Clemson, FSU, they're two huge fan bases. They're two huge schools and national prominent schools with history of success. So why would those conferences not want them? I think it's going to be interesting. But one thing we do know, unless something drastically changes between now and August 15th, Clemson is a ACC school at least through the spring of 2026.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast.
injured list just a few days after that. Depending on how he feels, it looks like they're trying to shoot for Thursday. Still up in the air. Wash said that Trout is biting at the bit to get up here, but he has to go and play the outfield. He did a lot of work in the outfield, doing a lot of things to get him ready for game time, but you can't recognize its effectiveness until you go through a real game. Wash said that he wants to see Trouty go about 7 innings in the outfield, and then they're going to ask him how he's doing, and then they'll let Trout respond and say, hey, I'm ready to come back if he's ready to come back. Wash said, we have our arms wide open, ready to welcome Mike Trout back to the Angels.
With arms wide open, let's go. I love that. I love that. Now, on the impact of Trout's return, Wash mentioned that it's going to be a huge boost. I know he might have a problem trying to get his offense where he wants it, but his presence for us is more important than his performance. Interesting. So we're going to be very happy to have his presence because he's one of those guys that can make everybody else better just by being there. So 2 questions here, Mike. First question that you and I and Locked On Everydayers have discussed often: should Trout be in the outfield or should he be at the DH spot? What do you say?
Well, when he plays the outfield, he's much better. And so I think if you want to see him produce, he probably needs to be in the outfield because I think that helps engage his mind. I think it helps engage his body. However, the guy is getting older and there's injuries that happen to him all of the time. And so I do think that you want to be cautious with him, but it doesn't seem like he got himself hurt and had the tear because he was in the outfield. It was running the bases.
It's going to happen anytime, whether he was DHing or not, if it was the outfield or not, if it was swinging the bat or not. Like these injuries are inevitable at this point.
I think you just got to go full bore with what Trout will tell you to do, right? We've talked about the Ohtani factor last year. They let Ohtani be Ohtani. I think with Mike Trout, you just got to go full bore. You just got to do what Mike Trout wants to do. And I think you do have to be wise about how you use him. So I could see him DHing a little bit more than being in the outfield. However, I can see him wanting to be out there and be engaged. Johnny, when Wash talks about Trout's return, he said it's going to be a huge boost. So my question to you is, do you believe that? Will it be a huge boost?
Offensively, it's certainly going to be a huge boost because he's the scary bat that this team has been missing. I think it's going to help somebody like Taylor Ward find it again. Look, he's had a great Monday and Sunday, so hopefully Taylor Ward will continue to do that until he's traded next week. Just wishful thinking there. But I will say, having Trout back in this lineup, Mike, you say it all the time. It extends the lineup. It extends the 1 through 9. Even Anthony Rendon's presence at the top of the order extends this lineup because you have some bats who are going to take some pitches. They're going to do some damage. They're going to take walks, things like that. So I think Trout in the offensive sense will be a nice boost. I think him being around the young guys, I want to see what that's going to do. I want to see if these young guys still believe that this is their team, because Mike Trout, the face of the Angels, is coming back. And look, he's been in the dugout. He's been super helpful when they're at home, obviously. Super helpful talking to guys, working with guys. All of that doesn't change. Now that he's back in the order and in the outfield, I'll be interested to see what happens with somebody like a Mickey Moniak or a Joe Adell. Are we going back to a platoon situation? Does Taylor Ward play left field all the time, or does he get some DH opportunities? Look, if you can defensively replace Taylor Ward, I'd do that 9 times out of 10 and put Moniak in left, Trout in center, Adell in right, because those are the guys that you need to continue to give everyday reps to. Whether they sink or swim is a different story. But right now, this is the season to figure out what you've got with Moniak, figure out what you got with Adell, who's riding a 7-game hit streak, came through big time for the Angels last night. So I'll be interested to see the dynamic of the Angels once Trout comes back.
Angels 32-39 after last night's victory without Mike Trout. So 7 games under 500, 11-18 with Mike Trout. So 7 games under 500. John, are you surprised by that record of being 7 games under 500 without their superstar?
Yeah, you'd think that they would really tank after losing Mike Trout. And on some days we've seen them really, really struggle to come through offensively. Look, last night was a great come from behind victory, but there was hardly any offense going until they got rid of Bryce Miller to get him out of the game. And you kind of wonder, does that happen if Trout's part of this lineup? So there have been moments, Mike, where he's sorely missed, but to know that they're 7 games under with or without him kind of makes me wonder what it would have been like with him over those 31 and 39 over that record, over that span. I'd be interested to see where they would be. Are they a 500 team with him on the team? I think they're closer to that. Obviously, I think that there's going to be a lot of Mike Trout moments that didn't happen over that span. It is interesting, 7 games below in both situations. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm kind of dumbfounded by that a little bit, but it is good to see that, hey, at least they didn't do any worse without him, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about the players that needed to step up. And in fact, Wash talked about that before the game yesterday, and he was really proud of the young guys stepping up. He mentioned Neto and Ohapi and Shonawell. I think you got to throw in Joe Adell, John. I know he's been really frustrating for fans, and he's been frustrating to watch because of his low batting average. But you and I have been kind of an advocate for Joe Adell, even though he's been sinking fast. He's
no, you said you were tired of Joe Adell earlier this season, and I've been on the Joe Adell train since day one.
You got pictures? You got nothing. So
we got episodes.
Things are starting to delete off of YouTube. What's happening?
That's weird.
The reality is it's good to see that these young guys did step up. Now, I do agree with you. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Mike Trout, not just present, but Mike Trout playing. I did think that it was interesting, and you pointed it out. I thought it was interesting that Wash said, we want his presence more than his performance because his presence is a game changer. I'd love to know how it is a game changer. When you hear these guys talk about Mike Trout, it's almost like they're starstruck, but in a really positive way. Not, oh, wow. But it's I get to play with Trout. This is so awesome. And I kind of want to perform. I kind of want to show him that I'm somebody you can count on, right? And so I think that I'm anticipating the players continuing to do that when Trout comes back, and I'm anticipating Trout bringing the energy level up a bit, and we'll probably see a bit of a boon because you're going to play the A's, and then they're going to, well, the A's have crushed us, but they're going to play the Rockies, right? And then they have the Mets who have kind of been up and down, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few series with Mike Trout present on this team.
Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets and football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On with $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
And I enjoyed the session with him because he multiple times talked about how Joe Burrow is the heartbeat, the heart and soul of the franchise. Didn't downplay his importance, which we all know, but still didn't downplay that, and didn't downplay it here because we've said it. Joe Burrow 1, Jamar Chase is 1A. And he said it may take a while to get the deal done, which I think, again, I think that both sides, it was something we talked about last week. The vibe I'm getting is like both sides would love to get something done if it worked, but are probably going to be comfortable as well playing this year out if they need to, similar to what happened with Justin Jefferson. And that's kind of the vibe I get here with Mike Brown. He knows that deep down they have to keep Jamar Chase, how valuable he is. You heard him say it. At the same time, when And I think that's the big question is the when may not be this offseason. It may not be in training camp. It may not be the Thursday before week 1. Maybe it gets done. But I think that right now the vibe is more looking towards that 2025 offseason is when the Bengals really, not that they're not trying now, but the Bengals and Chase are motivated to get something done.
Yeah, the full quotes out there, in addition to what he said in that quote that we just told you about, was that included Mike Brown
Well,
saying,
that's the full quote. That's the full quote. But there's another quote.
There's another quote, I guess, another quote, I should say, where Mike Brown said the offseason is a better time for some of these negotiations. He said, it's not likely that this is a good time to negotiate. The offseason is a better time for that. We try to keep focus on the football part. I'm not going to rule anything out, but I will tell you that the die has probably been cast. He says this in addition to saying that they're going to bend over backward to get it done. And hearing Mike Brown say that is quite interesting to me. This is an ownership group that I've been critical of in the past, James, for their stubbornness about winning the deal and their negotiation valuation stubbornness that they've displayed in the past. And obviously they bend those guidelines for their superstars, for the Jamar Chase level players, for the Joe Burrow level players. We just saw them do it with Joe Burrow. They were always going to extend Joe Burrow. They were always going to extend Jamar Chase. But this seems to me, and I would be interested to go back and look, and I haven't done this, should have done it before we started recording, to see what the language was that Mike used around Joe Burrow versus we are going to bend over backwards to get it done when discussing Jamar Chase, because that feels like a pretty powerful statement from the Bengals owner. Not that it's anything that should surprise anybody, not that this is some groundbreaking thing, but it is a very colorful way to talk about their intention to extend Jamar Chase, which I find to be noteworthy coming from the Bengals ownership group.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what he said last year. Let's see here. I just found a headline. Mike Brown stays mum on the state of contract negotiations with Joe Burrow. Oh, yeah. He said, I've bound myself not to talk about Joe's contract. They don't think it's helpful for the negotiations. The other side has made the same commitment and they have not broken it. That's what it was. They were kind of tight to the vest because honestly, I think he would have said maybe even more than that, because there's one guy that's more valuable than Jamar.
Oh, for sure.
His name is Joe. But it is almost and everyone knows it. So I don't think it really makes them more vulnerable. Like Jamar knows he's valuable. Joe, like the whole organization knows, but to come out and say it like that is interesting. And what I think the message, at least my takeaway here, is the Bengals are saying, look, we want to get it done. We're not debating his value. It might not be this offseason for whatever reason. Jamar may want to play out this offseason too. He might, and the Bengals might, because they might want to see him get to 2,000 yards this year before they pay him $40 million per, or whatever it is. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but it's it does feel like, at least on the Bengals side, that they're hopeful to get something done, but it just might not be this offseason. It could be. Hopefully it's this week. Hopefully it's Wednesday. But the other thing is that quote, just to give a little context about the offseason stuff, that was tied to like there being a deadline, like regular season. Would they be willing to negotiate?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're comfortable negotiating with Jamar up until the regular season. I think after that, they would kind of focus on the football, like Mike said.
Yeah, I think that probably makes sense. But the overwhelming vibe I get from those discussions is that Jamar Chase extension this offseason is increasingly unlikely. And we've talked about from Jamar's side that he is incentivized to wait a little bit. Doing the extension now maybe accelerates a little bit of money for Jamar, but he's going to get a lot of money in the near future anyway. Fifth-year option is essentially equivalent to a franchise tag. It's going to be nearly $22 million for him in that fifth-year option whenever that comes due. The rookie deal for a top 5 pick includes a lot of money as well. Not as much money as he'll make in this extension, obviously, but he can wait if he is so inclined to see if Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb push the receiver market further. Not that they necessarily will really bust the ceiling much more if at all more than what Justin Jefferson did, as we discussed. I think it was Friday's episode last week where we talked about extensions that could be coming for this team this offseason. But the vibe to me is that Jamar is still content to wait for that market to be a little bit more developed. He can wait another year if he feels like it. And the Bengals are acknowledging that it might take some time. And when you get that acknowledgement, in addition to the statement that they're willing to bend over backwards to get it done, it certainly seems like it will get done. It's just a question of when. And certainly more powerful language here than you ever heard them use for guys like Jesse Bates or T. Higgins. If this is conjuring up memories of, waiting the extra year for those guys, I don't think that those are comparable situations, just to be abundantly clear about that.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because they never, it was like, oh yeah, we like Jesse, hopefully we can make it work. We like T, hopefully we can make it work and find something that works. And
a lot of mentions about pie and salary cap constraints.
Yeah. Mike apparently mentioned pie to the writers. He did not mention it in his session with me when we were doing video.
No football, no NBA, no problem with FanDuel. With baseball, WNBA, and soon the Olympics, there's plenty to dive into over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, though WNBA on a bit of a break so we can get the Olympics. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. How about a little futures betting that's not really futures? We're talking about week 1 NFL lines. That's right. Training camp's here. We're ready for it. Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. We're going to talk about Jordan in a second. They're 1-point road dogs to the Philadelphia Eagles, even though they're not on the road. This game is being played in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So what are you waiting for? Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast.
Time. My big takeaway from this game, David, was I enjoyed so much watching this Heat Summer League team. I enjoyed this championship game more than probably any game from last year that the Miami Heat played during the regular season. This team was so much fun to watch. They took a ton of threes. They scored a ton of points, 120 points. And I know there was an overtime, but it was an Elam-ending overtime, which creates a target score. So there's no time limit. So there's a 40-minute regulation, less than the 48-minute standard regulation. So they scored 113 points in 40 minutes. And then Pelle Larsson makes 4 of the needed 7 points in the Elam-ending. Josh Christopher hits this crazy 30-footer at the end of the shot clock in overtime. This team has been so much fun to watch. It was a comeback in this one where they were down in the fourth quarter, came back and tied it on a and then they came back and tied it. Memphis takes the lead. Miami takes the lead. They're kind of going back and forth. Cole Swider finally takes the lead. They go up 113-110. Gigi Jackson comes back. He ties the game. The game goes into overtime. But this team has had to come back against Oklahoma City, against Golden State, against a bunch of these teams. This team was a blast to watch, and it all culminates on the championship. We don't need your stinking Larry O'Brien trophy. We don't need your stinking playoffs. What have you done for me lately? The Heat are world champions. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far, but it was exciting. It really was a fun game and a really nice showing all summer league long. That was an incredible game. And you know what? I think Miami was getting screwed by the officiating every time they tried defending somebody. I'm telling you, I don't know, maybe it's just the playoff drought here, but I was getting worked up about the officiating. Londis Williams gets called for a BS offensive charge where he barely brushed against a player. That was ridiculous, forcing a turnover. Should never have come down to it. Whatever.
You're texting me in the middle of this game, you're like, that's a BS
call. Yeah.
This is Summer League. We're talking about Summer. This is the most Summer League basketball I've ever watched in my life. This obviously for obvious reasons here, but I can't believe I'm sort of being facetious, but I'm also kind of excited that the Heat won this thing. It's so dumb.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know in the grand scheme it doesn't mean anything. Like you think about the past few winners from Summer League, and it doesn't really indicate much of anything. It doesn't indicate you have the best player or anything like that. Although Khalil Ware, we'll talk about a little bit later. He was actually named to the first team for the Vegas tournament, so that was an impressive showing. We had a lot of good games from a few guys: Alanis Williams, Josh Christopher, Pella Larson, who you mentioned before. It was fun. It was a great game. I love it. You know what? Let them enjoy it, because the work really begins now for a few of those guys who are trying to prove that they can make it to the Heat roster. And it was a really nice showing. And I think it matters to a certain degree. Like we all remember Max Strus hitting a game winner a few years ago, and then all of a sudden being a breakout player with the Heat when he was actually added to the full-time roster. I think that makes some difference, that you can show that you can make these moments count, that you can step up in big moments. So I think that's great. But overall, yeah, really just a lot of fun. Like, how else can you say it?
Let's talk about Pella Larson. Let's talk about some of these guys who stepped up in this game. It was a weird game for Pella Larson. He comes out, scores Miami's first 7 points, but also picks up 3 fouls in 4 or 5 minutes. And he's kind of on. He's on because of the officiating. He's sort of like towing the line between playing a really great game and also almost having to fouling out and not even be able to play in the game.
Yeah.
And he has like this gutsy performance at the end where he tightens up his game. I thought it was really telling to me that so Bisaccio calls a timeout to set up the last play of the game. So a real quick explainer on the eel mending, because I don't think I did a good job at the opening of the show. Basically, it's not how regular overtime in the NBA works. The score's tied at the end of regulation. You go to overtime, and basically what they do is they just tack on 7 on the score at the end of overtime, and that becomes at the end of regulation, and that becomes now the target score. So it basically becomes first team to hit that target score wins the game. So there's no clock. There's no game clock. There's only a shot clock. And what that does is it basically guarantees a game winner for every game, which is really cool. And I know the G League is experimenting with this too. The All-Star Game is experimenting with this format. I'm in. I'm totally in. But so Bisaccio calls a timeout to set up what could be the game-winning play. And I'm writing down on my notes. I'm like, okay, obviously, Alondas Williams, Khalil Ware, pick and roll. You only need 2 points. You don't need 3. You don't need to. That's all you need. You need 2 points to hit that target score. Just get the ball to the 7-footer at the hoop. That's the easiest way to get your 2 points. And they don't do that. Bisaccio draws up the play for the second-round pick with the first-round pick screening for the second-round pick. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is a test, right? Because I think Alondas Williams was playing better than Pella Larson in that game.
Oh, yeah.
But they said, you know what? Let's give it to the guys who we drafted. Let's see what this is. Let's see what they're about. They tested them, and they passed with flying colors. They ran this angled pick and roll on the side of the floor. Memphis crashed towards Ware, which they had been doing basically all night. Larson saw an opening, had a little push shot in the lane, got to his spot, push shot in the lane, hits rim, kind of tips back in, roll around, tips in. That's the game. He flexes, and he's I don't know if he's in the MVP of the game, but he hit the game-winning shot. But I thought it was interesting that Miami tested their rookies in that way, in that moment.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know how much of it was a design either. Like, it seemed like it kind of broke down to a certain degree, and then Pella just said, you know what, the defense did at least break down a little bit. And Pella just said, you know what, I've got this opening, as you pointed out. I can try to at least get towards the rim. But it looked like basically just sheer will on his part to try to get to the painted area. And the shot, it wasn't like he stepped back and had nothing but net or anything like that. He was kind of like stumbling, falling forward, and he kind of just hits the scoop shot, if I'm remembering correctly. And to your point, it did, again, roll around the rim a little bit. But, hey, it fell, and that's all you need. You just needed the 2 points. So he created an opening. I think he was kind of hoping that either he'd get a foul call and he felt comfortable in his free throw shooting, or that Ware was going to be able to back him up and maybe pull down a rebound and be able to finish with a dunk or something like that, a putback of some kind, or even get fouled himself. So it was just another opportunity to try to find a way to generate some scoring. Look good, whatever. Who cares? It was fun. I think the fact that they went to Larson, you know, at least at the beginning of the play, it does say something that they did trust him. You know, despite the foul calls and everything else like that, he really did have a nice sense for the flow of the game. I really appreciated the way he played overall. The fouls were a little bit of a concern, but I think he'll work his way through that. Overall,
a quick thing on Larson on the fouls. Sorry, just a data point. I looked it up. He averaged 3.8 fouls per 40 minutes in college throughout his collegiate career. That is a problem for him. This is a problem. You know, like, the guy went in the second round for a reason. He's not a perfect player. I like a lot of what I've seen, but hands in the cookie jar a little too much, a little too aggressive, a little too going 100 miles an hour all the time. He needs to kind of, the Heat coaches are going to try to be ironing that out. But again, it was really cool that at the end of this game, he was able to toe that line and kind of strike that balance and say, I could be aggressive enough to where I'm getting the game-winning shot and I'm playing good defense and all these things. And I am going to limit the fouls that were the most important ones, and I didn't foul out in this game.
I wonder how much of it is something that they can curb, because he just seems like he gives a lot of effort all the time. He's constantly pressuring the ball, picking up guys full court, etc. Maybe making up for maybe making up for some physical limitations, although he's not unathletic by any stretch, but I think he's got a high motor, right? That's for sure.
I think
and
it
so
takes
you wonder
him
how much
out
of
of position sometimes. I think he almost is
he forces it too much.
Frenetic, and he just sort of he takes like one extra half step or one step too far one way. Maybe he's trying to jump a passing lane, get a steal. He's a little too aggressive. And I think that's the thing that the Heat coaches have to rein in and say, you know what, just stay between your man and the hoop. Let's just start there and then be opportunistic after that. And because there was one foul in the game where he did just fly right by the guy, and then he kind of turns around with it and he extends his left arm and just smacks the guy in the arm. It was an obvious foul. And it's like, yeah, just don't overrun your defender that, or you're the guy that you're covering that way.
By the same token, it's kind of fun to watch, though, because you never doubt like the effort is there. Something that you don't always see at the NBA level, excluding Summer League. You know, it's just guys giving 110% all the time because they're skilled enough to make up for it. They don't have to give maximum effort. They're using skill and timing more than precision, more than anything else. With Larson, there's something about watching him dive all over, trying to make something happen. Sometimes it works. Sometimes, to your point, it doesn't. But it's still a lot of fun, I think, for fans in particular. I think he's warmed up a lot of the fan base that probably didn't know much about him. Like maybe we were able to predict the fact that he would get drafted by Miami in the second round. But other than that, I don't think a lot of people in the Heat fan base knew who he even was. And they saw him in Summer League and they go, oh, man, this guy's kind of fun. The fact that he is a shooter, that he can get to the hoop, that he has a mix of athleticism. He's got the nice push shot, the floater in the lane. He's got a nice combination of skills and effort that kind of make him a semi-fan favorite. I don't know how that's going to translate into the regular season, but either way, for now, it's something that he can definitely enjoy and build on moving forward.
Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets of football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On with $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast.
Monday and said the Cubs are prioritizing the future more than the present right now. Not exactly surprising, Sam, considering they went 22-39 over a 2-month stretch. But Hoyer giving more clarity to team's plans is now here. And the plan, as we're going to discuss in detail, is that they are totally open for business.
Yeah, it's a fancy way of saying we're sellers. We're selling. That's what Jed Hoyer was saying. And before we get into the who's gonna go, what can you get back for him, I just want to read a quote from Jesse Rogers that I just think is really telling when we think about the season and how the season's evaluated. And the quote was, Quote, the Chicago Cubs told teams a couple of weeks ago that they would probably be willing to trade some of their veterans. But then a sweep of the Orioles in Baltimore before the All-Star break put that on pause. But they're back to subtraction mode after losing a home series to Arizona. He goes on to talk about Bellinger. I wanted to highlight that because, we both, a lot of people like to always say, well, we overreact at things, and sometimes we do. If the Chicago Cubs and their red-hot bullpen find a way to shut the door Saturday night against St. Louis and split that series, and they win that series against Arizona, that's 2 games, Matt. It's a totally different conversation. Every game is so precious throughout the 162. The Cubs had so many opportunities, so many lost chances. We could go back and forth for an hour and talk about games that got away to avoid this moment, to avoid this day, where Jed Hoyer, I thought, publicly made it clear that this team is open for business. And it just shows you how precious it is. And even though we always talk about, I always say this, it's a marathon, it's 162, it's not a marathon, right? It's not as much of a marathon because, and it's a little bit later this year, but it's about 100, 102. Are you in a spot to add? Are you in that position? Because now the last 50, 55 games, you're going to probably be playing shorthanded over that 162 because you're going to sell. As much as people don't want to hear it, it's the right call. The Cubs made their bed. It's embarrassing that they got here. It's a failure that they got here. Those two things can be true. It's the right call. The Cubs would probably have to sweep the Brewers, win a series in Kansas City to at least get Jed to think about it. The only thing I'll say is I don't think that they're going to make a huge trade where it's like, oh my gosh, the Cubs are going to be terrible. This is their problem, right? They don't have anybody on their team where if they lose, they're terrible. They don't have that. I think the guys that we'll focus on will be Hector Neris, Jamison Tyone, Cody Bellinger. Then there'll be some wild cards like Nico Horner and things like that. I know you're going to talk about some reports. I think some guys today got mentioned just to let the rest of the league know that the Cubs are fully open for business. But I'm not surprised by this. I've been in this mode since that Monday night at Wrigley when Neris gave up the 3-run homer against Thairo Estrada. We made it official a couple of weeks later on the after right before the 4th. It's very sad, and it's a failure of a season so far up to this point.
Yeah, it's disappointing that we're having an episode that has become this much of a reality because you could tell the Cubs are not only open for business and listening mode, but they've told teams, hey, we're ready.
Yep.
We're ready. And the Athletic reported Monday morning, even before Hoyer spoke, that the Cubs were basically the story was the Cubs aren't buying. And then they even name dropped Justin Steele and Nico Horner. Yep. And I'm not reading quotes now. Actually, you already did this. I'm reading an excerpt from the story. Quote, though the asking price would surely be astronomical, those conversations could theoretically include offers for standout left-hander Justin Steele. Any idea of moving someone like Nico Horner, a Gold Glove second baseman who could also play shortstop, would have to involve receiving legitimate contributors who can be plugged into next year's team. Close quote. It's really a failure, as you say. It's a shame that they're in this spot and that this has to be the discussion right now. And ESPN's Jesse Rogers did mention Neris, Leiter, Miller, Tyone, Bellinger, and for the first time in a published report by a legit reporter, Christopher Morel, which signals even more that Hoyer is just open.
And right now for Morel, are you thinking some sort of sour cream and onion, Cool Ranch, spicy nacho Doritos in return? Because I don't see the value of trading a guy at his lowest point. I think Jesse Rogers, the Cubs are trying to leak and just say, hey, everybody's on the table if you want to give us a call. Because unfortunately so, Jed Hoyer is a master at selling because he's got a lot of practice.
Well, and Jesse gets into the visiting clubhouses a lot. I know he's plugged in a little bit with other teams.
Yeah.
And so I do think it could be from another team though, Sam. Like, hey, we heard that the Cubs are floating Morel out there.
Uh-huh.
And so there's a couple ways to look at that. I got a couple quotes from Hoyer in front of me.
Don't say that Morel's swinging for the leg.
Right.
It's a bad take.
They might get upset.
It's a bad take. It's a bad take, Matt.
Hoyer, quote, where we are right now, I would have to say that moves only for 2024 unless things change over the next week. We probably won't do a lot of moves that only help us for this year. If moves help us for 2025 and beyond, I think we're exceptionally well positioned, close quote. And look, they have improved a lot in the bullpen and on defense over the last month, but it took way too long. One thing that has remained consistent, as we know, is the lackluster offense. Cubs ranked 24th in scoring right now, a major drop-off after they finished 6th in scoring last year. Here's Hoyer on that. Quote, one difference between this year and last year is that our lineup has felt more shallow. This is not the conversation I expected to be having. You have to react to it and make the best decisions possible. Close quote. Shallow, it's more of like a pool term when I hear that.
Matt,
it's just it's ridiculous.
Matt. Here's where things went wrong.
22-39.
The Cubs tried to do a 2-timeline thing this year. They tried to win and compete for a playoff spot and rebuild/develop young players.
Did they do that last year too?
Not as much because Morel's playing third base, right? PCA's playing center field every day. And here's the thing. You could do that if you have a star offensive player or the ultimate Band-Aid in this game, which is a shutdown back end of the bullpen/closer. If you have a guy like Emmanuel Clase, as bad as the offense has been, you know what we're talking about right now? Bye. And I'm not talking in sync, dude. This team, they've blown 60,000 saves and they don't have an offensive hub, right? Those two guys are hubs. So it's like, hey, Christopher Morel can't play third. He's hitting 180 in the middle of your lineup. But guess what? Player X is carrying the load. Or, hey, we can't pull away from teams like the old Brewers used to do, but we got Josh Hader, Devin Williams. We didn't have any of those guys. And then we still weren't fully committed to winning, or Morel wouldn't have been playing third base and playing every day early on. So it was kind of a tale of two things that failed. You're going to have that, you need a stud or you need a major guy in the pen. So going into 2025, I don't necessarily disagree with Jed, but they're going to have to figure out a way to get a stud ninth inning guy, which is way easier said than done because those things are tough. Or you got to go out externally and get a bleeping star, a star offensive player, a guy that just oozes out star, that hits with men on, and then everything else will fall into place. That's where it's at right now.
Well, it is difficult to contend and develop at the same time, but I would just add that even their possible one bright spot, despite the major league struggles, the farm system, which is consensus top 5. Well, there are few or zero spots for all these guys when they're ready.
Right. Well, that's why they're going to make some trades here shortly.
There's no room, so they almost have to sell. And for that reason alone.
Yeah.
For that reason alone, Hoyer's in his 4th year running the show with 1 year left on his contract, Sam. He's got 1 year left. I don't think he's going to be a lame duck, but
no, they're going to extend him.
This is his 4th year already. Can you imagine if they extend him like a week from today?
No, they're going to extend him in the offseason, but they might not tell anybody about it.
Hoyer, really? Wait, what?
I could just see it being like a real under the radar news story.
Wow, that's bad.
Like because I mean, or maybe they do it right after the year, but they don't announce it until like, a while. I don't know what the policy is on that, but I could just see something like that happening. Tom and Jed, they got a great relationship.
So Neris does have the option if he appears in 60 games. I do think that means the Cubs will get less of a return.
For sure.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I think he's got to go.
Let's play
do
it. Let's play it. Name some guys.
I do think Leiter and especially
See you later.
especially Tyson Miller, who's under control through literally 2029, that could get a high return.
And
Especially
what do you mean,
Miller.
And what do you mean by high return?
A top somewhere between an organization's 11 to 20 prospect for Miller.
Okay, exciting.
Yeah.